Being a beginner, lacking in practice and knowledge, often scares us away from expressing ourselves or just being creative. But let me convince you why we have that backwards. I would like this video to leave you inspired by you as you are. I'd like it to leave you unafraid of the unknown and the not knowing, excited by it even, and fully confident in your uniqueness. I'll do this first with just a short anecdote, and then with an old poet's philosophical theory, and then I'll end with my dumb metaphor. And I'll be playing with Holbein's acrylagouache, Holbein, because I'm afraid of colour, and I feel uneducated and unpracticed in it, so I thought this video was a good excuse to try. I didn't read about creativity on purpose when I started this whole new thing that I'm doing. I thought, how will I know my true creative self and flow if I'm manipulating it with another person's information and process? Which leads me to this little anecdote. It was more than 13 years ago now, but I was going to an open day of my chosen university. I already knew what I wanted to do, but the philosophy department's pitch had me questioning things, which I suppose is the philosophy department's job. I said this to my dad, and his response was something like, I always thought it was weird to study philosophy for 4 years. I think it's more fun to make up your own philosophies. Isn't that what life's all about? It was something like that, and I took it seriously. And philosophy has been everywhere ever since. It was in the degree I chose to do in the end. It was in that book I read a tiny bit of that one time. It's been in 1,000 meetings with 1,000 strangers. It's been in depressive times and happy times. Philosophizing has made heartbreaking, even future-destroying moments in my life approachable, even acceptable. So it turns out he was right. Like the time he said, if you don't do a master's straight away, you never will. And here I am. I don't have a master's and I work in retail. So basically, life has been more fascinating analysing it through my own uneducated eyes, and I recommend it. But analysing is also a prison for the creative mind, oftentimes, which leads me on to the next bit. If you hang around this channel more than this video, you'll probably find that John Keats, the romantic poet, comes up quite a lot, probably just because he's the only poet I really know, but it also helps that I adore him. Listen to the closing lines of this sonnet. These are coming from the voice of a bird. Oh, fret not after knowledge, I have none, and yet my song comes native with the warmth. Oh, fret not after knowledge, I have none, and yet the evening listens. He who saddens at the thought of idleness cannot be idle, and he's awake who thinks himself asleep. This poem is Keats's theory of negative capability at work. I'll explain this in a minute, because it will be an ever-fixed mark on this channel and in my life, because I believe it to be so important to creativity and just life in general, that it can't not be weaving its wondrous way through everything, all the time, forever. The bird in this poem is natural. It just simply is. It doesn't have needs for facts or figures. The bird is attuned to time and nature itself. It flows with the whole. Like the conclusion in my last video, the aim is to simply be, where ego doesn't intrude, prevent, or force any part of us into anything or out of anything. It merely stays with us by our side to keep us alive and thriving, like a bird, like a tree, and the sun in limitless space. We don't need to concern ourselves with ourselves as much as we do with what we supposedly know or don't know, unless we want to be boxed up by our limited perceptions, of course, obviously. Here's an abridged definition of negative capability. I'll leave the reference in the description. So for Keats, what made the greats, or a man of achievement as he called them, he referenced Shakespeare specifically, was being capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. A poet, for Keats, doesn't dwell in self-consciousness. A poet does the opposite. A poet becomes the sea, the moon, the head upon a breast, feeling it soft, swell and fall. If you know the reference, A1. Poetry, art, life are sensational experiences. Nothing ever becomes real till it is experienced, is something he wrote to someone. He also said something about longing for sensations rather than thoughts. A hedonist, a materialist, maybe, or maybe just a man who understood the beauty in a single moment of inspiration, in the mystery and the feelings that arise from just simply existing on Earth, and knowing only that explanation and context and information and the act of knowing is very often that moment of inspiration's death. And so there's a bit of philosophy that I did actually read about. I didn't just come up with by myself. Now to my possibly really stupid metaphor. I can only trust the water in my own well from my own underground spring. If I let someone come and dump their water into my once pure well water, their water might be very beneficial. It might have minerals and stuff that mine doesn't have, but it could also just be poison. Now I have a problem, because now if I wanted to find out the properties of my original well water, I can't. What's this new concoction got to do with me? I don't know the difference between mine and theirs. I don't know the source of this person's water. I don't know if I would drink from it if I knew its properties. It's not my water, but my private well water is apparently no longer mine either. Okay, well, metaphor is done. If you're trying to start a creative life, a new experiment, you'll need a control, and that control needs to be you, without rationalizations of what being creative is, what it should look like and entail and feel like. Your creative flow or expression, or whatever you want to call it, needs to rise up from your own internal spring. Otherwise you won't know it when you see it. I'm not saying do away with all other input. That's arrogant. But for now, in the beginning at least, just don't go seeking it out. If you stumble across some other person's creative process, just leave it there and come back to it when you feel like you truly know the properties of your water. Oh no, there's the metaphor again. We perceive through the eyes of a whole different life and past to anyone else, a whole different ego. If we consume too much of other people's creative expression and flow and ideas, we'll probably be expressing through other people's past, perspective, ego. Then what good is your unique creativity? Because it's not yours. But I promise that is what the world wants to see. AI, eat your heart out. So, your unique creative flow, expression, whatever, is hidden there in your beginneriness, in your beginner self. It's in the mystery of what you don't know yet, and the mystery of what and who you already simply are. Whereas knowledge, with all its greatness, because of course it's great, it limits us by fact and reason. It pegs us into expressions that we might never have used, into beliefs we may never have had faith in, and thoughts that probably aren't our own. It locks us up and it scoffs at our instinct. So set yourself free and relish in your uneducation. Who knows what mysteries you might unfurl, being you first as you alone. It's the beginner's gift. Savor it. Thanks for watching. Love and peace and bye.